Mabuhay, good morning UK and good afternoon Southeast Asia, and a very warm welcome to this digital conversation on dynamic Philippines, innovating its way out of the pandemic, co-hosted by the UK-ASEAN Business Council and the Philippines Department for Trade and Investment, as well as the Board of Investment. To lead today's discussion, we are delighted to have Dr. Matthew Kavanagh, Director of Group Government Relations, Prudential, and a board member of the UK-ASEAN Business Council. We are also delighted that Her Excellency Rafaelita Aldaba, Undersecretary for Competitiveness and Innovation at the Department of Trade and Industry, will deliver the opening remarks and join a panel comprising of Mr. Perry Ferrer, Chairman and CEO of EMS Group of Companies, Mr. Art Tan, President and CEO, Integrated Microelectronics and Group President and CEO of AC Industrials, and Ollie Richards, Managing Director, Philippines and Southeast Asia of the Page Group. I'm Alan Lai with the UK-ASEAN Business Council based in Brunei. I have just a couple of notes to highlight before we begin. We would also love to hear your comments and questions and invite you to post them in the question box at the bottom of your screen. And secondly, do join us in the conversation on social media. If you're on Twitter, do tag us at UK-ASEAN and use the hashtag UK-ASEAN. And now, to lead us through a discussion on dynamic Philippines, I'll hand over the session to the chair, Dr. Matt Kavanagh. Over to you in London.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you to the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry and the Board of Investment for co-hosting this event with us. I'm, as Alan says, I'm here representing the UK-ASEAN Business Council, where I'm on the board, and I'm also a senior executive at Prudential PLC, which is a leading life and health insurer across ASEAN, and we're very proud to have been in the Philippines for almost 25 years now. So I'm very pleased to be chairing today's session. We chose this theme for today to dive into and find out more about how the Philippine government and business have really stepped up their response to the COVID crisis through an investment in technology, in new product innovation, and in expansion and refinement of their manufacturing capabilities. And there's some really exciting things going on, which I'm looking forward to hearing about and discussing with all the speakers. Also, we hope that by holding this event, we will build that understanding of why the Philippines is such a promising destination for UK companies to look at. With Prudential, as I say, we've been valuing that for 25 years, and we very much hope others will follow. So we're very pleased and privileged to be here, starting today's session by hearing from the Undersecretary, Dr. Feita, the Undersecretary for Competitiveness and Innovation, who is playing an absolutely central role in driving the inclusive innovation industrial strategy, which really puts innovation and digital services at the heart of the country's economic plans and how they are building their way out of the current crisis. Dr. Feita, you're known as the mother of the manufacturing resurgence in the Philippines, and a key figure in driving digital adoption. So we're really pleased to have you here today, and I'll hand over to you in Manila to give us your opening remarks.
Good morning, UK, and good afternoon, Manila. I hope you are all staying safe and well in these trying times. And thank you to the UK-ASEAN Business Council for partnering with the DTI and BOI in organizing today's webinar, focusing on dynamic Philippines, innovating our way out of the pandemic. Well, based on the New York Times COVID World Map Tracker, the Philippines is among the countries where new cases are lower and staying low. In the same groups are countries like Germany, Singapore, South Korea, Australia, Pakistan, Mexico, Russia, and Turkey. Now, I'd like to start by saying that the Philippines is a story of a country that has been seen as an economic star, with average growth of 6.2% in the last 10 years. And just as we reached the inflection point, the pandemic hit us. And like most countries, our growth contracted in the first half of this year by minus 8.6%. And this brought the country in its first recession since 1998 during the Asian financial crisis. Note that the country's macro fundamentals remain solid and strong. Investment grade credit ratings have been affirmed by Fitch Ratings, by Moody's and Standard & Poor's, despite the economic headwinds. And more recently, the Global Innovation Index 2020 ranks the Philippines 50th out of 131 countries, up from 54th last year. And this is the first time that the Philippines has breached the top 50 of the Global Innovation Index, which recognizes the country as an innovation achiever for the second year in a row. These improvements in the country's innovation performance and the growth of our startup ecosystem will be fueled further by two very important laws, the Philippine Innovation Act and the Innovative Startup Act. These two will establish a National Innovation Council as well as an innovation fund, along with the establishment of innovation centers and business incubators. We were in the process of implementing our new industrial policy, which we call Inclusive Innovation Industrial Strategy, when COVID-19 hit us. This new strategy focuses on innovation. It aims to grow globally competitive and innovative industries by embracing Industry 4.0 technologies to help us create new products, new services, and new business models. We are closing the gaps in our domestic supply chain and deepening our participation in global value chains. We are embracing Industry 4.0 technologies to help us in upgrading our position in the global value chain. And we are prioritizing the following activities: agriculture and agribusiness, transport, logistics, electronics and electrical, chemicals, furniture, garments, automotive, electric vehicle, climate change products, shipbuilding, IT services, and the creative industry. Using technologies like voice recognition, AI, AR, mixed reality, robotics, 5G connectivity, and industrial Internet of Things, we can create new products or solutions in areas such as smart buildings and smart home technology, digital health, e-gaming, smart assistants, vehicle technology, resilient technology, as well as in audio, video, and online education. And actually, we have lined up several Industry 4.0 readiness initiatives. We are working with the UNIDO in crafting Industry 4.0 roadmaps for electronics, for automotive. We are also conducting a feasibility study for the establishment of an Industry 4.0 pilot factory, together with an Industry 4.0 SME Academy to provide Industry 4.0 trainings to micro, small, and medium enterprises. We are also working with the universities on the formulation of an artificial intelligence roadmap to make the Philippines an AI center of excellence. And together with other government agencies, we are also formulating an Industry 4.0 human resources development roadmap. At the height of the pandemic, one particular issue that we had was the shortage of PPEs. We do not have a PPE industry. We are largely dependent on imports of medical grade PPE. And so amid this situation, we implemented the manufacturing repurposing program that aims to repurpose manufacturing activities toward the production of COVID critical products like PPEs, ventilators, and test kits. A group of garments and electronics companies invested $35 million creating jobs for 7,450 workers. Some of the companies you'll hear from them later. Now, through the application of new technologies like AI, big data, and fintech, Filipino startups are also helping in addressing COVID-19 issues, such as contact tracing, social distancing, community monitoring, health assessment monitoring, along with supply chain disruptions. Tech startups that were able to adjust their operations quickly have been experiencing rising demand for their products and services, particularly those that are in logistics, in transport, fintech, healthcare, edtech, e-commerce, and digital services. According to the recent growth estimates of the Asian Development Bank, the Philippines is expected to grow by 6.5% in 2021. Filipinos are known to be resilient, flexible, and resourceful. Long used to crisis, we resort to our own imagination and innovation, with government working together and collaborating with industry, academe, and other stakeholders. We believe that we will be able to get through this pandemic. And as the virus is contained and as fiscal support bolster the economy together with global recovery, we will be able to harness the emerging opportunities and challenges from shifting trade and investment preferences and changing forms of international production in the wake of COVID-19 by fast-tracking innovation and adopting new technologies with greater focus on a more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable industrial recovery toward the post-pandemic future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Undersecretary, and I think all our viewers will agree that's a really impressive presentation, and the breadth and seriousness with which you're taking this. And can I just say that from Prudential's point of view, we've seen an example of that. We're an example of a company that had a tech initiative that was already in the works before the crisis, our smartphone-based AI-powered healthcare app, Pulse, and it was launched in the Philippines in February this year, and it's had over 1.5 million downloads. And we've been really pleased with the support the government and the regulators have given that. But there's a long list of other sectors which you outlined where the government is supporting innovative businesses, and I hope we'll have a good set of questions for you after the other speakers have had their say. So thank you very much. We'll turn next on our list to Perry Ferrer, and we're really pleased to have a leading Filipino business at the forefront of innovation. EMS Group employs 17,000 people manufacturing electronic components, and their client list, impressive client list, including Epson, Toshiba, Tescom, and UK companies Invacom and Intel. So Perry, let's turn to you, and you're going to give us a few minutes on how your business has responded to the challenging year we've had.
Okay, good morning to our friends in the UK, and good afternoon to my colleagues here in the Philippines. Thank you, Matt. Next slide, please. Next slide. Our company is 16 years old. It's a private, all Filipino company, and we are a typical EMS company. We've selected 3 different business units in our company. We have the PCB assembly, we have contract manufacturing, and we have semiconductor and engineering services. We have 4 locations throughout the Philippines and around 17,100 employees. Now, early March, when the government asked private companies to assist in repurposing factories to help in providing PPEs to the government, during the March timeframe, there was a shortage of PPEs, and several companies had to lock down or prohibit export of their PPEs. So we were one of the companies that heeded the call of the government. So the decision was, which of the 3 sectors of our businesses do we repurpose? Next slide, please. So we decided we would refacilitize our contract manufacturing business unit to incorporate production of medical grade face masks. So with the help of the Board of Investments and also the Department of Trade guiding us through the various government regulatory processes. Next slide, please. We were able to convert our factory to produce medical grade N88 and KN95 face masks. Without the government's intervention and also assistance, we wouldn't have done it. But these are the three challenges we faced. You know, being an EMS company, supplier to aerospace products and also automotive products, the quality system that we had, being an ISO certified company, we just had to familiarize ourselves in the FDA or medical type processes. The second challenge was sourcing equipment and raw materials. That we had the Board of Investments and also to the various trade attaches in different countries also assist our company. And last was retraining a portion of our human resource in the quality standards, the medical terminologies, and also the processes that the FDA has to certify the factory. Next slide, please. In summary, the total project startup time was 5 weeks. We repurposed an area of 1,100 square meters. We were able to save 250 jobs. And currently, we've added another 150 workers to our face mask productions. We received our FDA license to operate in May. We have 3 product lines, the N88, the blue mask that you are all familiar with, and also the KN95. One of our challenges was product testing. We had to send our products to be tested in Hong Kong and also in Taiwan. All our products are to international standards, the European EN 14683 and the ASTM, the United States ASTM F2100. And one of the milestones we had was on May 29th, our first million face mask was produced. Currently, our capacity is 20 million and increasing as the government needs it. And one of our bigger programs is localizing the raw materials. Next slide, please.
Inside the company, but also some of the support you need from government in engaging with a new range of stakeholders. Thank you. Really, really interesting. We're going to turn next to Art Tan, who's the President and CEO of Integrated Microelectronics, and Group President and CEO of AC Industrials, which is one of the leading global technology solutions companies in the world. And Art, I believe, was last week ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. So a great experience there and a great opportunity to showcase the company. Art, please give us a bit more detail about your company and some of the partnerships you've built with other international firms around the world.
Thank you. And I guess good morning to you guys. I didn't realize that when I said yes, I was going to do this, I was going to be in a different time zone. So it's about 2:30 in the morning, my time. So please forgive me if I go ahead and try to go through this. But I'm really appreciative to the UK group and as well as to my favorite Undersecretary, Fita, for inviting me to give a flavor for how the Philippines and the companies within the Philippines have been able to innovate and try to manage through this pandemic. So I'll give a brief description of how IMI's response has been to the pandemic and how our relationship with the UK and the UK businesses have helped us try to manage through this. Next, please. So briefly, the parent company is Ayala Corporation. Most people are already aware of that. There's fundamentally several key businesses inside the Ayala Corporation, and I'm not going to belabor on all of them, but I just want to highlight that the group that I manage for the Ayala Group is the industrial technology side. Next, please. So inside AC Industrials, there's actually 2 major groups there. One is what we consider our global business, and the other one would be more of the domestic side of it. So I'll focus on the global manufacturing side because that's a little bit more tied to what we are discussing here today. And underneath that is the core is IMI, which is we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. And that's the one that actually is ranked 18th globally as the world's largest EMS company. And as I think we're ranked 6th largest in terms of automotive electronics globally. Underneath IMI is actually where we have two of our distinct subsidiaries, one of which is VIA Optronics, which is based out of Germany, which I had the pleasure of taking public last week at the New York Stock Exchange. And then the other subsidiary under IMI is STI, which is actually a London-based company which operates both out of Hook and Poynton out of Manchester, and our design center out of London. So, and these are actually the core of some of the engineering that we've used to transition some of the work that we've been doing in terms of the medical ventilators that we have been producing, both for the UK as well as the CPAP ventilator for the Philippines. And then the other part of that is the enabling technologies. And that one is more of different companies, both in Germany and in the United States, which focus on the megatrends that we care deeply, which is on the renewable energy side, so smart energy, and then on the mobility part. So next, please. So IMI, which I said was celebrating its 40 years, is actually a publicly listed company in the Philippines. Our 2019 revenue was at $1.2 billion US, and we have 22 factories in more than 10 countries. And of this, the core that we use, especially for the aerospace defense and the medical field, which actually was part of the UK Ventilator Challenge Consortium, which just recently ended, where we were tasked to produce 15,000 full-blown Penlon ventilators for the UK. And now we've transitioned to the second phase where we're actually producing it for export out of the UK. And the consortium actually we use the same group of engineers and to be able to now look at how we can use that experience and now help the Philippines, right? And so that's when we came across the Mercedes ULH University College, UCL, University College of London design of converting a regular CPAP into a CPAP ventilator flow generator, which would then be through a lot more cost effective. At the same time, it's also been shown that when there is intervention at the point of recuperating a patient prior to intubation of a full-blown ventilator, then the recovery rate increases tremendously to 60 to 70%. And so we then decided to use that design and build it and localize it in the Philippines. And that's where we now are producing and deploying in the Philippines. Next, please. So the Ventura, to talk more about the Ventura flow generator ventilation system, it's a non-invasive and it was specifically developed for mild cases of COVID-19. If you will look on a global basis, the number of confirmed cases is significantly high, and then those that are actually hospitalized goes up, and then we'll have about a 10% for that goes into the ICU. So there's a vast number, about 90% of patients that are hospitalized that do not require the full ventilator. And this is where this Ventura flow generator system comes in. It assists patients to breathe a lot better, preventing the need for an intubated ventilator treatment. And as you know, once you go into an intubated ventilator treatment, you now have to require an ICU and all the other hospital care that is very, very limited anywhere in the world. And the success rate, as I have mentioned, is 60 to 70%, preventing mild cases from becoming severe. It's very cost effective, and it's much more conducive for field deployment in all parts of the Philippines or any other third world country. The licensing for manufacturing in the Philippines have been granted to IAI, and we passed FDA approval as well. And we're now in the process of, actually, we've had the field testing and we're now producing it for deployment. The other part that we actually do, we've also produced the face mask, the surgical face mask, as you know, since we have 21 different factories over 10 countries. So the requirement for us to be able to continue to operate under those conditions in any country is the requirement for having face masks. So we decided to just produce our own rather than procure it in different parts of the world. And that factory is actually in Laguna. So we produce about a million of the masks a month, I think. But we supply all the factories of all our requirements globally. And then the excess of that is now sold into the local market. Next, please.
Oh, so I'm sorry to rush you, but can I ask you to try and bring things to a conclusion in a minute or so that we've got plenty of time for the questions?
Sure, absolutely. So the last part there is the other activities we're doing, which includes contact tracing using the same technology that we've developed and produced actually for a global basis, which is RFID, and of course the solar-powered hands-free sanitizing booth. Next, please. And so here's the collaboration that I mentioned, which is the Penlon ventilator system, which you're already very much aware of. And part of that engineering requirement actually is the use of Filipino engineers and operators that were stationed in the UK to help produce these ventilators. Next, please. And there you have it. So this is IMI, 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Look, really impressive and clearly absolutely vital work that the company is doing. And thank you for being so fresh and focused at 2:30 in the morning. It's one of the great things about the current situation that people can join events from all over the world, but we sometimes forget the challenges of the time zones involved. So thank you very much for making the effort to be with us. Okay, so we'll turn to our last speaker, Ollie Riches from Page Group. Who spent the majority of his 20 years with Page Group in Asia and is now the country director for Philippines and as well as Indonesia. Ollie, over to you to give us a few minutes on Page Group in Philippines, and in particular, I understand it's not been the most straightforward journey there in the Philippines, but something about that and what made you persist and your vision for the future.
Sure. Thank you, Matt, and good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be. And I think it's certainly the first time I followed somebody who rang the New York Stock Exchange bell from a presentation. So that's a career highlight. Thank you, Art. So for those in the UK, Michael Page, I think, is a fairly familiar name, maybe not so much in the Philippines, having just launched. Under the Page Group banner, we are a public listed business on the London Stock Exchange with offices around 35 countries, or 36 now, with Philippines having just opened, specializing in recruitment from board level down to staffing levels. But before I talk about the Philippines, I thought I'd just give you a quick snapshot of what we're seeing in the region, because we've just published our results from September, and the presentations so far have been pretty upbeat, and we're certainly seeing some encouraging signs from some of the dominant markets in the region, in the fact that September was our best month year to date across Asia. particularly in China, Japan, Singapore, and Hong Kong, who've all just registered their best months as well. So we get the impression that companies are now getting around the idea of just getting back to some sort of normality, and recruitment companies tend to be a fairly decent barometer of markets in terms of hiring trends. In terms of the Philippines, yes, it's been an interesting journey. I launched our business in mainland China, Indonesia, and most recently the Philippines, and each of them have their own stories to be told. The Philippines, we started looking at seriously about 2 years ago as part of our Southeast Asia expansion, and it's some of the rules are very clear, and a joint venture partnership is crucial, particularly in our industry. And it's kind of taken a bit longer than we thought it would. COVID in the last 6 months has clearly delayed that, but we have launched our business officially on August the 26th. We have 10 people now based in our office in Makati, and we'd look to double the size of that business in the next 12 months. We've got some challenges in the fact we can't get some of our senior management into the country at the moment, but that hasn't stopped us sort of moving ahead. And one thing we have done is a very social media-led launch campaign, and that's had the widest reach out of any country we've launched in the last 5 or 6 years, which I think is testament to sort of the conditions in the Philippines, and very encouraging signs so far. It's also that we'd imagine the last country will open for the next 2 or 3 years. So the Philippines as a whole is getting a lot of profile within Page Group globally, which again is no bad thing. One of the areas we are very connected to is obviously using our global infrastructure and global network to attract top talent back to the country. And we have a campaign we've launched called Bayan Nihan Tulay Sa Tagumpay, which I apologize for my Tagalog, which we are promoting quite heavily, and we're seeing a lot of success for that as well. The 10 people we've just hired have all pretty much had experience overseas and come back, and the quality of the people we've found is absolutely on par, if not better, than some of the other countries we've launched in Southeast Asia. So that also is very encouraging. I thought I'd just talk about 3 sectors just in terms of some trends we're seeing in the Philippines. The first one, HR. HR as a function for most companies has had to sort of play a fairly big role in the last 6 months for obvious reasons. And the innovation we're seeing in the Philippines is, we are generally seeing HR becoming or transitioning into much more of a sort of a partner HRBP type environment, and having a bigger voice within a business. Certainly been accelerated by current conditions, and areas like dynamic working, virtual onboarding, stakeholder interaction. So how do you attract top candidates at the moment when clearly there's a risk factor in moving jobs with everything going on? And we're certainly having phone calls from clients asking us to really help them either strengthen their HR function, or speaking directly with HR directors about how other companies are approaching this situation. On the manufacturing side, which clearly is in line with the previous 2 presentations, again, slow in general. However, some areas we are very busy in, particularly around packaging, food manufacturing, healthcare, and logistics. One thing we have seen, and again, a trend which has kind of set in this year, has been the push towards localization of senior management. We believe that's partly to do with the fact that it's difficult to get expats or foreigners from overseas into the country for obvious reasons, and we're seeing that again being an acceleration of the localization process in terms of succession planning, and putting some demand on the local talent pools to fulfill those positions, which again is no bad thing at all. And then on the tech side, it's our most sort of growth market, I suppose, this year in most countries around the region, and certainly in the Philippines too, particularly around education tech, health tech, fintech. Again, the challenge in those areas is really the supply and demand of candidates. There's simply not quite enough to go around. One strength the Philippines has in comparison to some other countries we operate in is that ability of tech professionals to cross over between being strong on the coding and engineering side, but also having the communication skills which are attractive to foreign invested companies. We're especially seeing that with startups looking to come in who are contacting us to help them set up their business in the Philippines, and clearly needing the right people to enable them to protect that investment. So again, the Philippines is well positioned in that, and a reverse trend we're seeing is now more traditional companies in areas like FS or FMCG, particularly attracting talent from some of the e-commerce players as they have a race to digital transformation for themselves. Clearly requires a certain skill set. So the last sort of 12-18 months has really been focused on e-commerce firms attracting a lot of the talent. We're now seeing that trend reversing with that talent going back into sometimes larger organizations or more traditional sectors. So from our side, yeah, certainly challenging. We'd love to give advice on how to navigate opening a foreign business in the Philippines. We've done it successfully. The journey was an interesting one, but the ultimate result is what we wanted. And there's a lot of excitement and overall quite a lot of positivity actually coming out of the Philippines, which seems to have been certainly the Undersecretary's presentation seemed to have reconfirmed that as well in terms of what we're seeing too. So very happy to answer any questions either now or offline around sector specifics to do with talent or setups of businesses in the Philippines.
Thanks, Ollie. Really interesting. So we've had some 4 great sets of remarks there, and we've now got 25 minutes or so for questions, and then I will make sure we finish promptly on the hour. So please keep the questions coming in via the Q&A section. Some of them of people that have already been answering them, but I'm still, I think, going to pick out a couple that were definitely of wider interest. I mean, one, as various people have said, look, there's some really great and very positive presentations today. But I wondered if people wanted to say a little bit more, maybe starting with the Undersecretary, about what are the challenges at the moment for actually companies operating, employees getting to work, and so on. How is that changing? How do you see it changing over the next couple of months? Perhaps start with the Undersecretary, and then others who want to come in. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Well, of course, the one big issue has been the supply chain disruptions that affected most of our companies initially while we were on quarantine, while we were on lockdown. But right now, a lot of companies are already operating. In terms of I think there was a question, I was about to answer it, but let me take it up as it is already related to your point. Companies have made transportation arrangements for their workers. Some others also made living quarter, they arranged as well accommodation. So both for those that are going back to their homes, transportation has been arranged. And for some others who are really required to be in the factory daily, home accommodation has as well been arranged. But right now we are already in a situation wherein many of the, like what I've said, many of the businesses have already been opened. And in fact, in the most recent production managers index, which is the barometer of the activities of manufacturing in the country, the index already went up from something like 48 in August to 50 point something this September. And that is an indication that there's already a lot of business activities going on. If it's below 50, of course, that's still in the contractionary area. But if the number reaches 50 and above, then that's good. And in fact, comparing this index vis-a-vis the index for other countries, Philippines is number 2 among the ASEAN countries. Number 1 is Vietnam, and then number 2 is Philippines. And as we open up more sectors, then more economic activities would be carried out, and we would as well be, we will be able to open up as well the other transportation businesses. And this would follow as soon as, of course, we keep on monitoring the health situation, because we cannot really open up that fast, considering that in order for us to control the situation, in order for us to achieve really a successful economic recovery, we need to take control of the health situation. We don't want to overwhelm the health, our health sector, and hence we're really very careful in terms of opening up the economy. But like what I've said, right now, we see that things are already moving, and a lot of companies are already operating, and workers are able to go back to their workplaces.
Thank you, Undersecretary. Ollie covered this a bit in his remarks, but Perry or Art, do you want to come in and say something a bit about how things are on the ground?
I'll start. During the quarantine period, it was really challenging. Being an export-oriented company, our factories had to be running. So, like I echo what Yusek Fita mentioned, we had around 380 workers sleep into our factory, rotating. So, but now our attendance is at 86%, and strangely enough, we are operating at capacity with 86% attendance. So we're doing some reorganization. That was one of the good points in learning here. The 10% of our employees that doesn't go to work there's still that fear of COVID and transportation, taking transportation, and also in the manufacturing setup. But inside the factory, we've done a lot of protocol implementation, from distancing to hygiene protocols. So we're back running at 100% with 86% attendance. So there's some savings there. So thank you.
Thanks, Perry. Art, do you want to come in?
No, I just echo the same thing. I mean, it's very challenging because, and we look at it from different parts. You know, we had to deal with the same situation in China, in Europe, and in Mexico, and here in the Philippines. And I would say the most challenging one was in the Philippines, because the extent of the shutdown in the Philippines was significantly protracted as compared to all the other countries. Like Perry did, we had to house, I think at one point we were housing 2,500 employees inside the factory and providing on-the-ground support for them so that they could continue to be quarantined inside the factory and deliver to our global customers. As you know, as being part of the global supply chain, you can't stop that process, as the rest of the world was starting already to come back. So I think moving forward, there's a lot of lessons learned that could be derived from how other countries have been able to manage, because they're also dealing with the same pandemic that the country is, and their solutions and policies may be something that we could also glean from. It's like what the UK did. Thanks
very much. I'm going to take a couple of linked questions now. We had one from Mark to Ollie, which is, which countries are you seeing most interest from in terms of investment into or starting up in the Philippines, and in particular on the tech side, any interest from the UK or elsewhere? So which sectors, particularly on tech, but also other sectors? And then an earlier question from Angela to the Undersecretary, which is, I mean, you did answer this briefly in the Q&A function, but I think it would be of interest to everyone to say a bit more about what barriers do you think there still are to companies coming in from outside and the government's plans for addressing them. So Ollie, if you want to say something first about where you see the most interest, and then we'll go to Dr. Featon.
Yeah, in terms of foreign investment in the tech space, it's kind of all over is the truth. Quite a lot coming from China, and that's typical across Southeast Asia. The Japanese and Korean markets are also looking pretty favorably on the Philippines. Further west, we are seeing a lot of clients coming to us who traditionally would have looked at China first, and with some of the challenges with China and well documented with the US, we are seeing companies diversifying their sort of footprint in Asia and looking at countries like the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam. I suppose the question is how the Philippines gears itself up to win that business compared to its neighbours. But certainly the interest levels we're finding are there. I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding that the Philippines is a low-cost country in terms of talent. We are having to educate that you still have to pay for quality wherever you are. But certainly I imagine I probably take 4 or 5 phone calls a week, and this is during a pandemic, from companies overseas, either US or UK, looking to explore the Philippines market.
Thanks, Ollie. So turning to you, Undersecretary, where do you see the remaining barriers, and what are your plans for responding to them?
Yeah, these are mostly in the services sector, primarily in public utilities, because these are actually embedded in the Philippine Constitution. And actually the main way by which we could address this would be by changing the Constitution, which is actually going to be very difficult at this point. And even in the previous administrations, it was not carried out because of the difficulties that would ensue. But we found that there is a way that has been found, and a bill has already been filed. And in fact, this is a priority legislation of the present administration. And right now, of course, the focus of the legislation is on modernizing our incentive structure. And this is already at the plenary. And as we speak, the plenary is ongoing. I think this is the period of interpellation, and soon it's going to be passed. But I'm thinking that probably after this, then they could already take up and advance the stage of hearing the bill on liberalizing this public utilities sector.
Thank you, Undersecretary. Got a couple more questions I've got my eye on. Please do, we've not got much more time, so if you've got a burning question out there in the audience, please do register it now. Chris Nelson rightly pulls our attention towards, Chris Nelson from the British Chamber, towards SMEs and medium-sized companies who make up the bulk of the economy, and what is the Philippine government doing to support SMEs and medium-sized companies? Perhaps the Undersecretary first, and then maybe Perry and Art could say something about how they deal with SMEs and medium-sized companies in their supply chains. Undersecretary.
Yeah, well, right now, given that many of our micro, small, and medium enterprises have really been hit badly by the economic crisis arising from the health crisis, so many of the programs in place in order to help them recover are really focused in terms of providing financial support, providing them with more liquidity to help them restart their businesses. But at the same time, we also have programs in place providing shared services facilities. These are facilities or equipment that we give to micro, small, and medium enterprises. Of course, there are other support in terms of providing support in operating their businesses, such as helping them find ways by which they could access the market. So creating more linkages between these SMEs, our MSMEs, and the large enterprises. We are also providing support in terms of improving their marketing and entrepreneurial skills, as well as providing them with platforms, digital platforms, providing them with trainings. And our department actually built a program. It's in order for us to showcase the best Filipino products, and these are actually being these are distributed across different parts of the country. Mostly you would find them in malls, and it's really a very good way by which we're able to showcase and market the products of our micro, small, and medium enterprises. And as we've seen during this pandemic, really it's very important for our MSMEs, not only MSMEs, but including the large, for them to go digital, for them to do more e-commerce. And that's also our focus now. We're helping them in terms of onboarding, helping them onboard in e-commerce platforms, as well as providing them with a lot of training and support in order to make it easier for them to move from the traditional towards this digital platforms.
Thank you, Undersecretary. Art, do you want to say something about how you involve SMEs?
Yes, maybe I'll give an example, a tangible example. As I explained earlier, part of the business that I have also the domestic side of the business. And one of those is actually we're producing a European motorcycle brand called KTM in the Philippines. And these motorcycles, of which in order to avail of the FTA requirements, had to be 40% localized. And in that case, we are proud to say that we actually produce the entire motorcycle here in the Philippines. And our largest export market for those motorcycles is China. So I know it's hard to believe that there is a product, a final produced product in the Philippines that is competitive and sold competitively in China. But that's what we have. And so the way we've done that is together with the government and with the SMEs, the different supply chain that we have, is we've optimized and got them to the level where they now meet world-class requirements, and at the same time be competitive in being able to produce a manufacturing hub in the Philippines as a gateway for KTM to address the ASEAN market. So right now, the product, which is the motorcycle, which we export to China, to Thailand, to Vietnam, to Indonesia. So these are, and including Myanmar. And so this is to me, is a tangible example of when the government and the private sector puts their mind and focus into a single product and decides to now generate the proper policies, as well as developing the small, medium scale supply chain to make it a competitive hub for the ASEAN market.
Thanks very much, Art. And Perry, is there anything you want to?
Yeah, I have just a short message similar to what you said, Fita said. We have the SB Corp, Small Business Corporation, that's helping our SMEs through their financial requirements. But this morning, at least this morning here in the Philippines, we had a discussion with the Department of Science and Technology on how we can help the SMEs that have been really terribly hit by this pandemic. The DOST has a 4-step program, which is the startup to surge up. So this is how to restart the SMEs trying to find new products or repurposing their products for the new normal market. So there is that program ongoing now, and that's a nationwide program run by the Department of Science and Technology. Also, there's a resurgence of nationalism here. And so we have the buy Filipino, buy Pinoy type. Even the multinationals are looking ways similar to what Art mentioned, localizing. Our company is localizing a lot of products, not just our export product, but really making the effort of buying local. And from the government side, they're improving the infrastructure for internet infrastructure in the rural areas. They're looking at satellite type application. In fact, one of our partners, Global Invacom, has given products to the government and showed that using satellite in the rural areas that can provide as high bandwidth as the regular fiber products in the National Capital Region of Manila. So there is a lot of activities happening, very focused on getting our SMEs to online e-commerce as well as e-health. So the Industry 4.0, as discussed earlier, it's ongoing. There's a little bit of slowed down, but it's back, and with some help with the government, helping the SMEs. We have, as you mentioned, the majority of the companies in the Philippines are SMEs, trying to bring them to the digital age. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm afraid we are running out of time. I just wanted to highlight a couple of questions which we're not going to have time to discuss, but maybe we can return to on a future occasion. There was a question about the importance of the education sector, which the Undersecretary did answer in the Q&A, but then another question came in. You know, she said what the Philippine government was doing to engage with that. There was another question on potential for partnering more with UK educational institutions, which I know some of our members will be very keen on, but maybe that's for another day. And then another question on using new technology to drive financial inclusion, financial participation in banking and insurance, which is close to our heart at Prudential, but again, I'm afraid we've run out of time for that. But just before we close, Undersecretary, do you want any closing, just a couple of minutes closing remarks from you?
Yes, maybe I would just want to share that, well, right now, of course, the focus is really towards ensuring that our companies, not just the micro, the small and the medium, but as well as the large, we are providing them with all the necessary support to ensure that they would survive this pandemic. Some of our Industry 4.0 programs have been rescheduled, but starting next year, those programs that I have mentioned, particularly those that would support our MSMEs in terms of the preparations that are needed to make them ready for Industry 4.0, the adoption of Industry 4.0 would already be started. We are building an Industry 4.0 pilot factory along with an Industry 4.0 SME Academy. This would serve as training facilities to ensure that our SMEs would be able to transition, they would be able to shift towards smart, the building of smart factories and be able to adapt and conduct smart manufacturing, because we believe that this is really the best way for us to be able to survive this pandemic. And as we face the new normal, the contactless and the high-tech era, the post-pandemic era, we really need to ensure that our industries, that our companies are.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary. Look, we have, I'm afraid, run out of time. Thank you, everyone, for sending in the questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get through them all. Thank you in particular to our speakers, some really great presentations. People have been saying in the Q&As, could UK-ABC share those, so we can do that. If people want to take a bit more of a detailed look when they have the time, we can certainly do that. So thanks very much. I mean, look, it's been a great discussion. A lot of speakers have been admirably frank about some of the challenges, but also really positive about some of the good work that's going on and the opportunities there are as well. So that's really encouraging. I know our members and viewers will have really appreciated that. So thank you very much. Thank you also to Michelle Sanchez, the Philippine Commercial Councillor in London, for helping organise this. And thank you to the UK-ABC team, Veronica and Alan and others for setting this up. And thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been really great to have you here. It's a great discussion, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our future digital events. Thanks very much.
Thank you.